This is why single men have better lives in 2019. Is it better to be single in 2019? Or it is better to be single in 2019? I say it is, for my own reasons, but the reasons go beyond me. The reasons are there for many men to see, and for many men they feel the same way. So let's use some Xenoblade Chronicles X from the Wii U for the background footage. Simply because I hope they port this damned game to the Switch, because I will never buy a Wii U. And I will read a small snippet from this article, from the metro.co.uk. It says, "Single people can teach us all about relationships." Interesting, how could a single person ever teach anyone about relationships? They're single, they're by themselves. Vain, selfish MFs who are doing life all for themselves. Yes, indeed, and it's beautiful. But seriously, now this is written by a doctor. So we have facts and receipts, for those who like facts and receipts. Dr. Eliakim Kislev, who is also an author. From this well-written article, he says, "The rise in singlehood is unprecedented. In the UK, unmarried make up 50% of the adult population. In the United States, research predicts that approximately 1/4 of young adults will never marry." So that's 1/4 of those in the United States, young adults, they will never marry. In Japan, love and sex are simply out of fashion. A 2015 survey shows that 1/3 of Japanese adults under the age of 30 had never dated, and over 40% were virgins. There are many explanations for these numbers. Women's growing independence, demanding careers, individualism, growing mobility, and urbanization processes. But does this mean single people are lonelier than married people? The Wall Street Journal recently published a piece titled "The Loneliest Generation." Its authors argue that we are in the midst of an epidemic in which people feel lonelier than ever before. As always, we, the unmarried people, are the usual suspects. The author's argument is simple. Singles have no one in their lives to whom they can turn to in times of need, and therefore they are lonelier than married couples. However, a quick look at existing data reveals something that might surprise some. Single people, especially long-term single people, are the most networked and socially active individuals. And that makes perfect sense. It's what I've been saying all along. He goes on to say, "My analysis of more than 300,000 people from 31 countries shows that single meet their friends more frequently than married counterparts. Of course they would, there's no ball and chain. Accounting for all other variables, age, gender, education, income, etc., widowed, divorced, and never married individuals meet their friends 17, 20, and 45% more frequently than married people, respectively." One of the main explanations for these findings is that those who choose to marry enter into what researchers call a greedy marriage, in which couples turn inwards and cut ties with friends and relatives. This in turn frequently leaves them feeling lonelier than their unmarried peers. I will leave it there, link the rest for you to read. Very interesting article, pretty much what I have been saying all along. Makes sense. You see, certain relationships, it does seem as if it's just you and her, depending on you and the woman, because if she in herself is a very inward person, an introvert, and you may be or may not be, but either way, you can have a relationship where it's just you and her, almost all of the time, where everyone else is almost closed out of this world that you and her inhabit. It's just you and her. Everyone else are their other planets, their moons, satellites, they're orbiting at a distance. And amongst the many things that men do in these commitments, it's the lack of outer connection. It's the lack of bonding with other people that are not her. And sometimes you have to wonder if this is why many women hate certain friends that men have and certain family members. Thus, they try to separate him from the rest of his peers, his people, his flock, his family, friends, whatever, and keep him all for herself. Almost in a selfish way. Now yes, you could say men do the same thing as well. But even in these relationships, in these marriages, as the doctor is calling greedy marriages, many people fall into a state of feeling lonely simply because the only other person they have to communicate with is the other person in the relationship. They have shut off so many others that certain connections and bonds may have withered and may be difficult or impossible to reconnect. So of course, in being a single man who is focused solely on his life, of course in turn he would actually be a more social creature. It makes more sense. Why wouldn't he be? Because he's not about shutting himself off from the rest of the world. No, he understands there is always more out there to seek and to do. There is always more people to come across. Just because he's single does not mean he's celibate. He could just be, let's say, busting and moving as he goes. Busting and moving as he goes. But the main focus will always be there. He understands this has to be here, regardless of the woman. Single men have better lives in 2019 because of all he had just said, all that was said in this article, and things I have said before, how modern women have this independence. They are also very demanding, one could say more so than they have ever been, but who knows? They have demanding careers as well. They have an abundance of attention they can get through social media. It's a very different time we live in than, let's say, 15 years ago. Things are very different now in such a short amount of time. Single men can have more fun because to not have to burden yourself with all those demands, a man can then almost be boundless. He's not restricted. There is no ball or chain. He's free, literally. It then comes to what single people could teach anyone about relationships. There are many things you could say. There are many things I could say. But I will summarize it into one sentence. It has to be worth it. It has to be worth it. There are so many things one has to do in modern times. So many commitments, so many other life things one has to focus on. You have to ask yourself, is it really worth it? Is she worth it? Is she worth just a quick moment in time? Or is she worth my actual time, my commitment, me, all I have to give and offer? That's when you have to weigh out your odds. Ask yourself if it is actually worth it. The thing is, in 2019, clearly, myself, I can see it is not. I could still have my fun, but for anything more than that, I can honestly say in myself, it's not worth it. Not for me. There are too many things yet to do than to wonder if I should trap myself in this relationship. You could ask yourself a question. Have these modern relationships become like traps? Become like prisons? Many are difficult to get in, but almost impossible to escape? What do you think? For the self, for the I, focus, observe. Remember, the world is yours. Have a nice day.